In a galaxy where humans are taught to be nothing more than myth, two alien researchers uncover a discovery that shatters everything they know. Senior researcher Var has spent his long life studying fictional humans as fascinating legends, stories passed down across countless worlds. His young assistant, Vex, still full of curiosity, believes the past may hold more truth than their leaders admit. When mysterious debris arrives from a battle in deep space, their investigation reveals impossible artifacts, personal items, technology, and even writing that perfectly matches descriptions of humans. The more they study, the more the evidence refuses to fit the official history. Against every rule and expectation, Var and Vex embark on a dangerous field expedition to learn the truth. What they find is far beyond relics, it is living, breathing proof that humanity exists, and that the galaxy's most dangerous secret is alive. The stakes grow higher with every discovery, not only the survival of one human child but the decision of whether the galaxy should ever know the truth. The Museum of Extinct Civilizations floated in silent orbit above a gas giant, its silver spires glinting against the light of two distant suns. Inside, the specimen analysis chamber stood like a sacred place. Its hexagonal floor was dark as still water, polished to a mirror shine. Tall titanium columns rose toward the ceiling, glowing softly, making the air feel heavy with importance. Senior researcher Var stood at the center table. His gold-rimmed eyes rotated in different directions, sweeping the chamber like independent scanners. Fine silver-white feathers framed his face, aged at the edges into faint gray. Deep grooves marked his dark beak, scars from decades of careful, precise work. Beside him was Vex, his junior assistant. The young researcher's amber eyes shone with curiosity. Perfect white feathers formed a smooth disk around his face, arranged in flawless circles that caught the smallest sounds. A set of sealed containers rested on the table. They had come from the Galactic Archive's Deep Space Recovery Division, the result of a mysterious battle in a sector thought to be perfectly safe. The defeated side was known, the Ignan fleet. But the identity of the other combatant was unknown. Var tapped the first container. Standard unpacking protocol, junior analyst Vex. Yes, Professor. Vex's beak clicked in agreement. Piece by piece, they lifted out the wreckage. Twisted metal fragments told stories of violent impacts and unbearable heat. Scorched silicon chips still hummed faintly with ghost traces of their circuitry. Whole plates of alloy made the analysis machines vibrate with confusion, the composition matched no known species. Then Vex froze. Professor, look at this. He held up a small, oval piece of metal. It was worn, scratched, but still showed a pattern of engraved markings. I believe, this matches descriptions from fictional texts, Vex said carefully. A dog tag. Var tilted his head, inspecting the artifact. His feathers ruffled slightly. The next find made them both fall silent. A charred food container, chemical analysis revealed organic compounds designed for biological consumption. Unfamiliar, but functional. Its label bore strange symbols and letters. Latin letters. Var set it down slowly, his beak barely moving as he muttered, impossible. And then, the final blow. From the smallest container, they lifted a damaged personal device. The screen was cracked but still glowing faintly. It displayed an image, figures standing together in front of a ship. Figures with bare skin, hair, and expressions unlike any species alive today. Humans. Var's heart pounded. 70 years of research, thousands of pages written about fictional humans, all his careful theories that they were a product of shared myth. All of it now shaken by a simple, undeniable image. The machines did not lie. Metal compositions matched nothing in the galaxy. The molecular bonds in the circuitry showed techniques more advanced than any modern species. Even the food packaging was unlike anything they knew, and yet perfectly functional. This, Vex whispered, his feathered ears tilting forward, this can only mean one thing. Var's beak clacked. The Ignan could have made these. Psychological warfare, to destabilize their enemies with impossible legends. Vex shook his head. No. The molecular structure, the manufacturing marks, they're consistent, standardized, real. Professor, humans are not fiction. Var turned away, his 4 eyelids blinking in rapid sequence, a trillion sign of stress. He wanted to argue, but each machine in the room delivered the same message. These were authentic. And if they were authentic? He breathed out slowly. We cannot take this to the council yet. It must be verified in the field. Vex's amber eyes narrowed, catching the unspoken truth. Var was protecting something, perhaps himself. But he nodded. Field verification, he agreed. The request was filed under the most boring possible description, routine artifact authentication. Priority, moderate. It passed through the bureaucracy without a single raised feather. 3 days later, they stood on the civilian dock beside their research vessel. Sleek, silver-white, with long sensor arrays like delicate spines, it was a ship designed for precision. Transport confirmed, Var said, his voice crisp. All artifacts secure, Vex replied, sealing the last container. The ship lifted away from the station, sliding between the huge support struts. Stars opened before them. Their course led to the debris field where the items had been found. Hours later, the wreckage appeared, a vast graveyard of ships, twisted metal drifting slowly in the dark. The Ignan fleet's remains were obvious, jagged, blackened, and still carrying traces of their energy signatures. But scattered among them were pieces that matched the museum's new samples exactly. Vex adjusted the sensors. Matching alloy composition in Sector 47K, weight, anomaly detected. On the display, a cluster of debris moved in a stable pattern, too organized for random drift. They approached carefully. The anomaly was an intact pod, its hull scarred but whole. Symbols, unfamiliar yet instantly recognizable from fictional records, were etched along its side. Bring it aboard, Var ordered. The pod was guided through the loading bay and set onto the central table. Scans showed multiple internal chambers. One contained a faint power signature. Another, Var's feathers shot up. Life sign. They stared at each other. It was impossible. And yet, there it was. The inner chamber was temperature regulated. The life form was small. They moved to the viewport. Inside, pressed against the glass, was a face from legend. Smooth skin. Dark hair in 2 braids. Large, wary eyes. A human child. She tilted her head, studying them with surprising calm. Then she tapped the glass and pointed urgently at a flashing red light inside the pod. She made a gesture, hands pressed together, then toward her chest, and mimed breathing. She's running out of air, Vex said sharply. Var hesitated. We don't know if she can breathe our atmosphere. The girl tapped the glass again, faster this time, her gestures growing desperate. Vex's feathers flared. If we wait, she dies. For a long second, Var stood still. Then he nodded once. Open the hatch. The external release failed. Vex didn't hesitate, he grabbed the plasma cutter, sliced through the pod seal, and pulled the hatch open. Cool air rushed out. The girl leaned forward, eyes darting between them. She stepped out slowly, every movement cautious but deliberate. Var and Vex both trembled. Humans were real. The child's bare feet made soft sounds on the ship's metal floor as she stepped fully out of the pod. Her eyes were wide but steady, scanning every detail of her feathered rescuers. She clutched a small, flat device in her hand, holding it tight like a lifeline. Vex crouched slightly to appear less intimidating. He tilted his head, a trillion sign of welcome, and gestured toward the ship's interior. The girl's gaze followed his movement, her expression caught between fear and curiosity. Ship, Vex said, turning toward the control console, compile all human languages from the museum's mythology archive. Cross-reference with any writing in her pod. The processors hummed, lights flickering as streams of data poured across the display. Within moments, the screen flashed green. A translation matrix was ready. Vex took a data pad, typed slowly, and turned it to face the girl. In clear letters, it read, "Don't be afraid. We mean no harm." The change in her face was instant, the tightness around her eyes eased, her posture relaxed slightly. She looked down at her own device, her fingers flying over the surface. The pad in Vex's hands beeped as the translation came through, "Want to go home?" Var's feathers twitched in alarm. "Impossible. Our mission is artifact verification, not." "She's not an artifact," Vex interrupted. "She's a living being. A child." Var began pacing, his beak clicking sharply. "You don't understand what you're suggesting. First contact with a species that, until an hour ago, we thought was a complete fabrication." The girl watched them, clearly aware that she was the subject of their tense discussion. She typed again. The pad translated, "Please. Family waiting." Her eyes locked on Vex, and he felt something deep in his chest, the undeniable truth that leaving her would be unthinkable. "The coordinates are in her pod's navigation system," Vex said quietly. "We could take her there." "The council would never approve," Var shot back. "Then we don't ask them," Vex replied, his feathers settling into a determined pattern. "We've already broken every expectation about humans. One more breach of protocol won't matter." Var stopped pacing. His gold-rimmed eyes shifted toward the girl. She stood still, holding her pad close, waiting for their decision. For the first time in his long career, Var's scholarly caution bent under the weight of something greater. "Plot a course," he said at last. The ship's engines hummed as Vex entered the coordinates. The pod was moved to a secure position, but the girl refused to sit far from them, choosing instead to watch the stars from the bridge viewport. When the jump drive engaged, the starline stretched into blinding streams, and space folded around them. Hours passed in near silence, broken only by the soft hum of the ship and the occasional beep of the navigation system adjusting their trajectory. Finally, the ship slowed. The viewport cleared. The human vessel emerged from the darkness like a waking giant. Its hull was vast, bristling with weapon ports and dotted with hundreds of lights. The design was alien to them yet eerily familiar from the fictional records, sleek, predatory lines combined with functional symmetry. Var exhaled sharply. Intimidating for a species that supposedly never existed. The girl pressed her face to the glass, her small hands gripping the edge of the viewport. Her entire body leaned forward with unmistakable recognition. Relief radiated from her posture. The ship's comm system crackled to life. "This is UNS Harbinger. Identify yourselves and state your purpose." The voice was clear, confident, and, shockingly, already in Trillan language. Vex blinked. They already speak our language." Var straightened. "We are researchers from the Museum of Extinct Civilizations." State your purpose," the human voice repeated, firmer this time. Vex leaned toward the mic. "We found one of your escape pods." "There's a child," the transmission cut abruptly. The silence was heavier than before. Then, the Harbinger moved. Its massive bow split apart, revealing a docking bay large enough to swallow their ship. Brilliant white light poured out, and their vessel trembled as an invisible pull gripped it. "They're pulling us in," Vex said, activating the reverse thrusters. The engines roared, but the gravitational lock was unbreakable. The girl tapped his arm and showed her pad. "Okay. Safe." The words didn't match the tension in Var's feathers as the docking bay walls closed around them. The ship settled with a final shudder as magnetic clamps secured them in place. The hatch hissed open. A single human stepped through first, tall, broad-shouldered, and unarmed. Behind him, several others entered, weapons at their sides but not raised. Their movements were efficient, professional. The girl hesitated for only a moment before running toward them. The unarmed man dropped to one knee, catching her in his arms as the others checked her quickly. Then he looked up at Var and Vex. "I never thought I'd see the day when a Trillin rescued one of our missing children," he said, his voice carrying the same perfect clarity as the translation matrix. His mouth curved upward, a human smile. Var's eyes narrowed. "How do you know our language?" The man chuckled. "We made a pact with the council long ago. We decided to disappear from the galaxy's stage. Let the other warrior species fight over the title of fiercest. We had nothing to prove." Vex's feathers rose slightly as realization struck. This was before our time. The younger races wouldn't know. The man nodded. "Exactly." Var leaned forward. "The Ignan, do they know about you?" The smile faded. "Every few decades, one of their warlords comes looking for a challenge. Sometimes they find us." He glanced at the girl. "It never ends well. For anyone." Vex hesitated, then asked, "Her family, are they here?" The man's jaw tightened. "She thinks they are. But her ship was one of the first the Ignan hit. Only a few pods escaped. She must have drifted for days before you found her." For a moment, the chamber was silent except for the low hum of the Harbinger systems. Then Vex and Var bowed their heads, all four eyelids closing, the deepest sign of Trillin respect. The human inclined his head in return. "My name's Marcos. And I think we have things to discuss." The docking bay's ceiling loomed high above them, crisscrossed with gantries and lit by panels of soft white light. The air was warmer here, with a faint metallic scent that seemed to cling to every surface. Human crew members moved with quiet purpose, their eyes flicking toward the Trillin visitors but never lingering long. Marcos led them down a wide corridor, the girl walking at his side. She kept glancing back at Vex, as if to make sure he was still there. Every time their eyes met, she gave the smallest of nods, a silent thank you. They reached a secure meeting room. Inside, a long table dominated the space. The walls were lined with displays showing tactical maps, data streams, and images of distant star systems. Marcos gestured for them to sit. Vex settled into the seat cautiously, his feathers brushing the chair's back. Var remained standing, his gold-rimmed eyes fixed on Marcos. "You want to know the truth," Marcos said simply. "Why the galaxy thinks humans are a myth." Var's beak clicked once. "That would be a start." Marcos leaned forward, resting his forearms on the table. "Centuries ago, the council was different, smaller, more aggressive. Back then, every ambitious species wanted to prove themselves as the strongest. We were, in the way. We had the technology, the numbers, the experience. And that made us a target." Vex tilted his head. "You fought them all." Marcos gave a humorless smile. "We could have. But we knew how it would end, constant war, endless challenges. So we made a deal. The council would classify us as extinct. Our history would be turned into myth. In return, they'd leave us alone. And we'd stay out of galactic politics. And you agreed to this?" Var asked, disbelief in his tone. "We did," Marcos said. "It's easier to survive when no one's looking for you." Vex glanced at the girl, now sitting quietly with a medical officer checking her vitals. "But the Ignan found you." "They stumbled into our territory," Marcos replied. "We tried to push them back without drawing attention, but, you've seen the result." His eyes darkened. "That battle cost us ships. Lives." Var's feathers shifted. "If what you say is true, the council has been lying for generations. Entire civilizations built on false history." Marcos's gaze locked on him. "Sometimes, lies keep the peace." The room was silent for a moment, the hum of the ship's systems the only sound. Then Vex leaned forward. "What happens now?" You have your child back. Do we go back to our museum and pretend none of this happened? Marcos studied him carefully. That depends on you. If word gets out that humans are alive, the galaxy changes overnight. Some species will want alliances. Others will want revenge. And the council will be forced to take sides. Var's beak tightened. And war follows. Marcos nodded. Exactly. That's why we prefer to remain a legend. The door opened, and a new human entered, older, with streaks of silver in his hair and a uniform marked with higher rank. He studied the Trillans for a long moment before speaking. I'm Captain Reeves. I command the Harbinger. Var and Vex both inclined their heads in formal greeting. Reeves came straight to the point. Marcos says you found the pod by accident. That you didn't know what you were walking into. That's correct, Var replied. We were investigating debris from the battle. And now you've seen us, Reeves said evenly. You understand what that means? Var hesitated, then nodded. It means we have a choice. To tell the galaxy the truth, or keep it silent. Reeves stepped closer. And? Var's feathers flattened against his head. I am not certain yet. The captain's eyes hardened. Then allow me to be certain for you. If you speak of us, people will die. Entire species will burn for the chance to prove themselves against us. Vex's beak clicked softly. You ask us to erase what we've seen. I ask you to protect something worth protecting, Reeves said. The girl suddenly stood, crossing the room to stand beside Vex. She took his hand in both of hers, looking up at him with clear, unblinking eyes. No words were needed, her presence alone was a plea. Vex felt the weight of it settle over him. The image of her drifting alone in space was still fresh in his mind. If secrecy kept her safe, perhaps it was worth the cost. Var exhaled slowly. If we agree to this, what happens to us? Marcos smiled faintly. You go home. You keep doing your work. And you remember that somewhere out here, humans are still watching. Reeves added, and if the Ignan push again, maybe one day, you'll see us fight. But not before. The decision hung between them like a blade. Finally, Var nodded. Very well. The museum will remain, unaware. Vex glanced at him in surprise, but said nothing. Reeves stepped back, satisfied. Then we'll see you safely to your vessel. And we'll make sure your ship's logs reflect only what you want them to. As they stood to leave, Marcos leaned close to Vex. Thank you for saving her. You've done more than you know. Vex's amber eyes met his. I think I do know. They walked back to their vessel under silent escort. The girl waved once before disappearing behind the docking bay's inner doors. When the clamps released, the Trillan ship drifted free, the Harbinger shrinking behind them until it was just another shadow among the stars. Neither of them spoke until the jump drive engaged, carrying them back toward familiar space. Then Var said quietly, we will erase everything. No records. No trace. Vex nodded slowly, but in his heart, he knew he would never forget. The Museum of Extinct Civilizations came back into view like a silent monument in space, its gleaming structure unchanged, yet for Var and Vex, nothing felt the same. The journey from the Harbinger had been quiet, each of them lost in thought, carrying the weight of an encounter that would never be recorded in official history. As they docked, automated clamps locked their vessel into place. The familiar voice of station control welcomed them back, completely unaware that the two researchers had just stepped into the heart of the galaxy's most dangerous secret. Inside the specimen analysis chamber, everything was exactly as they had left it, the dark polished floor, the glowing titanium columns, the hum of preservation equipment. Yet to Vex, it all felt smaller, more fragile, like a stage set for a performance that had already ended. Var moved immediately to the mass spectrometer console. First priority, he said, his voice calm but heavy, is to wipe every trace of the Harbinger, the pod, and the girl from our records. Vex hesitated. You're certain about this? Var's gold-rimmed eyes rotated toward him. We agreed. If the truth escapes this chamber, it will spread like wildfire. The consequences will not be contained. The young researcher didn't argue. Instead, he accessed the molecular structure scanner's database, scrolling through the files until he found the ones containing human data. One by one, he deleted them. The system's lights blinked, erasing the readings as if they had never existed. Var worked methodically, purging the ship's navigational logs, the debris field scans, and every detail of the pod's composition. Even the image of the girl, the first human face either of them had ever seen in person, vanished into nothing. The act felt like a betrayal to Vex. He knew the logic behind it, but the finality of the deletions made his feathers tighten against his head. We're destroying history, he said quietly. We're preserving peace, Var replied. His beak clicked softly, the sound sharp in the still air. Imagine if the Ignan learned humans still exist. Imagine if every predator race in the galaxy decided to hunt them down for the glory of it. Do you think the Council could stop that? Vex stared at the empty consoles, thinking of the Harbinger's massive hull, of Marcos's warning, and of the girl's small hand gripping his. No, he admitted. But it still feels wrong. Var's feathers shifted in a subtle sign of weariness. Sometimes the truth does more damage than the lie that hides it. They moved to the storage cabinets where the pod fragments had been kept. Each piece was carefully removed, sealed in a destruction container, and sent into the station's recycling furnace. The hiss of the furnace door closing was the sound of history being reduced to scrap. As they worked, Vex found his thoughts drifting. He remembered the child's eyes when she first saw their words on the translation pad. The relief. The hope. And then, the way she had looked back at him before disappearing into the Harbinger's corridors. She'll be safe, Var said, as if sensing his thoughts. You don't know that, Vex replied. No, Var admitted. But I believe it. The humans have kept themselves hidden for centuries. They're very good at survival. Hours passed in silence as they finished the purge. By the time they were done, the chamber looked exactly as it had before the debris had ever arrived. The polished floor reflected the overhead lights perfectly. The machines hummed their neutral tones, ready for the next harmless project. Var stood in the center of the room, scanning it slowly, as if making certain no shadow of the truth remained. There, he said. It's as though it never happened. Vex looked around and saw only emptiness. It happened, he said. We happened. She happened. Var's gold-rimmed eyes focused on him. And we will remember. That's enough. They left the chamber together, the heavy door sliding shut behind them with a soft hiss. The lock engaged automatically, sealing in the secret. Later that evening, in his private quarters, Vex sat at his desk. A single data crystal lay in front of him, its surface dull and unmarked. He hesitated, then slid it into the small recorder. A single image appeared, the translation pad, showing the girl's first message, "Want to go home?" He stared at it for a long time, his feathers motionless. Then he removed the crystal and hid it inside the hollow base of an old research trophy. It was against everything he and Var had agreed to, but he couldn't bear to erase her completely. On the other side of the station, Var sat alone, gazing out at the stars. In his long life, he had studied countless myths, but never once had he thought he would become part of one. Somewhere out there, humans were still alive. Somewhere, a little girl was back among her own kind because he had chosen to act. He clicked his beak softly, almost like a sigh. Some legends, he murmured to the empty room, are worth protecting. The next morning, the museum stirred with its usual rhythm. Visitors drifted through the public halls, pausing to admire displays of extinct species. Guides recited carefully polished narratives, each one approved by the council. In the specimen analysis chamber, Var and Vex stood side by side. Their latest assignment, the chemical breakdown of ancient mineral samples, sat ready on the central table. It was work so ordinary that no one looking in would ever guess what they had done less than a day ago. Vex adjusted the scanner's calibration, his movements precise but lacking their usual energy. Var noticed, though he said nothing at first. When the younger researcher finally spoke, it was in a low tone meant only for him. "Does it bother you?" Vex asked. Var's gold-rimmed eyes shifted toward him. "What?" "That we're pretending," Vex said. "Every visitor in this place walks past displays about fictional humans. They believe the lies. And we're letting them." Var's beak clicked once, softly. "It bothers me. But it would bother me more to see those humans hunted because we couldn't keep a secret." Vex didn't argue. The images of the Harbinger and its crew were still sharp in his mind. He could picture the way the humans moved, confident, prepared, but not reckless. They had the look of people who understood danger and respected it. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a delivery drone. It floated into the chamber, carrying a sealed container marked priority, routine research material. Vex signed for it automatically, but as the drone left, his eyes caught on the label in the corner. A faint series of letters had been printed in a language almost no one in the galaxy could read. But he could. Latin. He looked quickly at Var, but the senior researcher's feathers remained calm, his expression unreadable. "Open it," Var said simply. Vex did. Inside were mineral samples, ordinary enough. But tucked among them was a small metallic token, no larger than a coin, engraved with a pattern of lines and stars. On the reverse side, 3 words were etched in precise Latin script: "Legends never die." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Vex asked, "From them?" Var's beak curved slightly, not a smile exactly, but something close. "From them." He took the token, turning it over in his claws. The metal was warm, as though it had been held recently. "They wanted us to know they're watching," he said. Vex felt something tighten in his chest. "Then they know we kept our word." "Yes," Var agreed. "And perhaps they want us to remember why." They placed the token back into its container, logging the mineral samples in the official record. Nowhere in the system would there be any mention of the coin or its message. It was theirs alone to keep. Days turned into weeks. The museum's routine swallowed them again. Yet sometimes, late in the work cycle, Vex would glance toward the far wall where the human mythology displays stood. Visitors would smile, laugh, or shake their heads at the legends of hairless bipeds who traveled the stars and fought impossible battles. And he would think of the girl. He imagined her safe aboard the Harbinger, maybe reunited with what remained of her family, maybe starting a new life among her own kind. He wondered if she remembered him as clearly as he remembered her. One evening, as they prepared to leave, Var paused at the chamber's door. "Vex," he said, "you've done well." Vex tilted his head. "For what?" "For understanding that sometimes, protecting the future means burying the past," Var replied. His gold-rimmed eyes glinted in the low light. "But also for remembering the past we buried." Vex thought about the hidden data crystal in his quarters and the token now locked in their private safe. "Some things," he said quietly, "should never be forgotten, even if they can't be shared." Var's feathers shifted in agreement. One day, the galaxy may be ready for the truth. Until then, he gestured to the quiet, sterile room. "The legend lives here. And in us." As they stepped into the corridor, the station's viewport offered a sweeping view of the stars. Somewhere out there, hidden from the galaxy's gaze, the Harbinger moved through the dark, a ghost ship carrying a living truth. In the silence, Vex imagined its engines, the steady rhythm of its crew, and the girl looking out at the same stars, perhaps thinking of the 2 strange feathered beings who had pulled her from the edge of death. He hoped she knew that they would keep her secret. And as the stars drifted past, he realized something: the humans had never been extinct. They had simply chosen to become a story. A story that, for now, belonged only to those who had seen it. The galaxy would go on believing the lie. But somewhere, in the spaces between worlds, the legend still breathed.